live button. What's up, folks? DGL7. Oh my goodness, my co-host Lisa finally back. Yeah, she's been working at Hyperion Academics. Go check. What is it? HyperionAcademics.com.
Yeah.
She programmed her own homeschool, curriculum that anybody can use anywhere across the country. But now it's time for us to make some. We have 4 minutes left. We'll see if it pops up on the screen. We can make some crazy predictions right now.
I was about to
And if
say,
it comes true, we can have a viral moment. So, you have any crazy predictions right now?
I
I'm making
was
a crazy one just off the wall. But if you got one, go ahead. You first.
okay. No, maybe our predictions are the same. Go ahead. You go first.
Okay. The thing is that earlier I was watching this other stream where Trump was speaking, and he was talking, I guess, like earlier in Atlanta or maybe like Philly. I don't know, one of those. But the thing is that he was saying that he doesn't like RFK, but he said he likes Cornel West and Jill Stein. That was weird to me, but then it makes sense because RFK is right. Yeah, the one that eats in most into his campaign. You know what I mean? So he wants Jill Stein and Cornel West viewers because they don't like Biden. So he's gambling that they're going to vote for him because he's the anti-establishment pick. You know what I mean? Now, but the thing is that I think what happens if he called Tulsi for his VP? Because the thing is that, right? Yeah, he wants to hurt RFK. RFK got Nicole Shanahan, or whatever her name is, right? Yeah, but he could call. It's kind of weird that he didn't call it. So he could hurt RFK by taking the VP slot. What do you think?
I think that RFK wanted Tulsi, and I think she turned him down.
Yeah, because she wants to go with Trump.
Right there's something happening. There's something happening. We know she went to Mar-a-Lago.
Here's another.
And I can tell you, in LA, she did a fundraiser for the Republicans in LA, which probably East Coast doesn't know about.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah. So
here's something else that's interesting, right? I think it could start at any moment, but we'll see. I'm just on the CNN.com page. But the thing is that recently, RFK, right? Yeah. Dennis Kucinich left his campaign. So I thought it was, thank God it's over and done with. No. Recently, RFK went to speak in front of like the Senate or House or something. And Dennis Kucinich was in the audience right behind him. I said,
interesting. And this is interesting. Just how long ago was that? Because that
wasn't
happened
that long ago.
That happened when he addressed the flag, but he was still with his campaign. I thought to myself, RFK must have good views on Israel because Dennis Kucinich would not be with him. And then when then when October 7th happened, it didn't surprise me that Dennis Kucinich left. So after all the crazy things that RFK Jr. was saying. So that's the thing, this new bill that they passed, this new the new basically funding bill they have for the military has basically a clause in it that says that they're going to basically start up selective service, a mandatory selective service again. They're not going to make it voluntary. And every kid that they know, 18 to 26, is going to be on it. They're not going to make it voluntary, like you have to sign up when you're 18. No. If they know you exist and they know your age, you're on the list, period. So they're just gonna use surveillance or whatever, a driver's license. I mean, people are saying, oh, kids are not going to get driver's licenses anymore because that's what's going to sign them up. Maybe, I don't know, but they're doing it all over the world. Croatia just started again their compulsory selective service and military service again. If y'all remember, Buttigieg, when he was running, when Tulsi was in the race, was saying that he was for a mandated selective service where everybody does some kind of national service. So they've been thinking about it for a really long time. Now they want it, and it's BS. It's slavery. It's, it's conscripting our kids. It's more people wanting to kill kids. So I'm really interested to see what they're going to say about that, and what they're going to say about conscription, because Biden just signed it.
Population.
And this was you
We're
know,
live from Georgia, a key
bipartisan.
battleground state in the race for the White House. In just moments, the current U.S. president
Interesting. You
will
got any
debate
predictions?
the former U.S. president as their party's
My prediction is that
presumptive
Biden might
nominees,
surprise
a
us.
first in
This is a
American
contrarian.
history.
It's a
We want to
contrarian
welcome our
prediction.
viewers in the United
Biden might
States and around the
surprise
world
and do
to our
better than
studios
we
in
think.
Atlanta.
That's
This
a
is
cool
the
prediction. Yeah,
CNN
let's see what happens.
presidential debate.
This debate is
What's
being
yours?
produced
What's your
by
prediction?
CNN and is coming to you live on CNN,
I think
CNN
we'll see if
International,
Trump declares
CNN.com,
his VP.
CNN Max, and CNN
What do you
Oh,
think?
Espanol.
that Trump
This
gives
is a
us,
pivotal
that Trump
moment
tells
between
everybody he's
wants to
President
win,
Joe
and
Biden
pulling out a
former
VP
President
pick could
Donald
be like
Trump in their
that's
rematch
going to get a
for
lot
the
of
nation's
attention. You know what I mean?
highest office.
He can,
Each
if
will
he
make
starts
his
to
case
fail,
to
he
the
can
American
pull that
people
out
with
and then
just
take the
over
air away
4
from Biden
months until
with
election
the
day.
VP announcement.
Good
He's
evening,
like,
I'm
oh,
Dana
crap,
Bass,
crap, you know
anchor
what I
of
mean?
CNN's Inside
So who do you
Politics
think he
and
might?
co-anchor of
I think
State
he
of the
might.
Union.
I'm Dick Tapper,
Declared
anchor of
Tim
CNN's
Scott or
The
something?
Lead and co-anchor of State of the Union.
These are
Dana and I
hostile,
will
right? Yeah, he said it in
co-moderate
the
this
I was
evening. Our
watching him
job
earlier. He was
is
like
to
talking before the event,
facilitate a
and he's
debate
like, yeah, like
between the two
CNN
candidates
sucks.
tonight. Before we
Big Tapper
introduce them, we want to share
sucks.
the
And
rules
he
of
was
the
like,
debate
these
with the
people are
audience
like
at
the
home.
worst people for me to
Former
debate with.
President
So he's
Trump
not
will be on
wrong.
the
Like
left
they
side
the
of the
enemy
screen.
basically.
President Biden
CNN
will be
sucks.
appearing on
He's
the
right.
right. A coin toss determined their positions. Each candidate will have 2
He
minutes
said
to
it different,
answer a
but that's
question
basically what it
and
meant.
1 minute each for
Oh my God,
responses and
Biden! Now
rebuttals. An additional minute for follow-up, clarification, or response is at
let
the
him
moderator's
trip
discretion.
on the way to the podium. Let him
When
trip
it's
on
time
the
for a candidate to speak,
Let him
his
trip right
microphone
now.
will be turned
Yeah.
on and his opponent's microphone will be
I
turned off.
feel bad because he's
Should a
old.
candidate
Because he's
interrupt
not
when his
there.
microphone
I've
is
heard
muted,
that some
it
people
will be
think
difficult to
that
understand
they're
for
going
viewers
to
at home.
use a
At
bad
the end of the debate,
performance
each candidate will
as
get
a
2 minutes
reason
for
to like
closing
switch
statements.
out
There
somebody,
is no studio
to switch
audience
him
tonight.
out.
Pre-written
So
notes, props, or
that's
contact with campaign staff are
see,
not permitted
see.
during the debate.
I
By
don't know.
accepting our invitation to debate both candidates
I can
and their
tell you that they just
campaigns,
had a fundraiser
agreed
out
to
here
accept
in
these rules.
Los
Now,
Angeles,
please welcome
and Biden
the
raised 30
46th
million
President of the United
at
States,
this
Joe
fundraiser.
Biden.
Yo, he looks okay. Only slightly robotic, but he's
Yeah,
like,
only.
he looks like he's awake.
And please
I mean,
welcome the
I've seen some other
45th
video. It's
President of the
bad.
United
Like he
States,
looks awake.
Donald Trump.
All right.
I have to say, this dude is always entertaining. Like,
Trump's got a better walk.
he's like
He
a car
already
wreck.
walking better.
He's like
He
a
already
car crash. You
Gentlemen,
can't
thanks so
stop
much for
looking
being
at
here.
him.
Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home
More than
prices have
that,
jumped
what the
more
hell
than
is he talking
30%.
Oh.
What do you
One
say to
to
voters who
120?
feel
Yeah,
they
okay.
are worse off under your presidency than they were
Oh
under
my
President Trump?
God!
We got to
He
take a
looks.
look at what I was left when I became president, what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do is try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out in a position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, but there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. Price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination, what I was left with in corporate greed, is the reason why we're in this problem right now. In addition to that, we're in a situation where if you take a look at all that was done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down the price of prescription drugs, which is a major issue for many people, to $15 for an insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they can include beginning next year. in a situation and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price of around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Thank you. President Trump?
We have the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID. And when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce back jobs, a bounce back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, the fact of the matter is that we find ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant. And the military, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Am I allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. Now, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing. And they don't know what they were doing. It was probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt. Well, so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his
I hope one of
administration.
them says
He did the
we're
mandate,
gonna
which
lock
is a
up Fauci,
disaster,
but I don't think they're gonna
mandating
say
it.
that.
The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done. We've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country. And I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat
Got it, Biden.
Medicare.
Go
He beat
ahead.
it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and
Be good
millions
for
of
a
people
while.
coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people. They cannot believe what happened to the United States of
Does Trump
America.
feel
We're
sorry
no
for
longer
Biden? Did he
respected.
just give him that?
They don't like
You
us.
think he feels
We
sorry
give
for him?
them everything they want, and they think we're stupid.
No,
They think we're very stupid people.
I think that
What we're
he
doing
doesn't
for
want to
other
look
countries,
like,
and
you
they
know,
do
a
nothing
big
for
jerk
us.
by like
What this
completely
man has
skewering
done
him.
is
But
absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election.
now they're giving him a break
Court overturned Roe
a
v.
little
Wade.
bit.
This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion bill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex, but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was, an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say, Florida is different, but they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided, supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including the young woman who was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters, it's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't. But they would have, everybody wanted it brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. First time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican. Nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. The Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period. Under
Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? In fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the
This is
board.
some of the interesting things
We
about body
separate between
autonomy, because he's
and
talking
very
about
much-
mandates,
You're going to sign that
and
bill?
everybody's
I'll
against
veto it.
to take
He'll
a
sign it.
shot,
Thank
you
you.
know, that they think
Let's
that
turn
might
now
be
to the issue of
dangerous.
Immigration and border
but,
security. President Biden, a record
You know,
number
I was
of
just watching
migrants have illegally crossed the
Nobody
southern
said my
border
body,
on your
my
watch.
choice. So
Overwhelming
Yeah,
border
exactly,
states,
exactly.
overburdening cities such as
So,
New York and
my
Chicago,
body,
and in
my
some cases
choice,
causing real
only
safety
if
and
you're not a
security
woman.
concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers, significantly. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more border patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we have the safest border in the history of our country. But all he had to do was
that's what we want to
all he had
see,
do
man.
was
That's
leave
what I
it.
want to see. I
He
want to see him
decided to
beat him
open
up.
up our border,
I want to
open up
see.
our
I want us to
country
get vicious. That's what I
people
want.
that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now. All terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere. All over the world, they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open.
I don't
And
know
he
if it's
didn't
going to be
need
90 minutes or
legislation,
just an
because I
hour.
didn't have
probably give
legislation.
him
I
a
said,
break.
close the border. We had the
Yeah.
safest border
Yeah.
in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency,
I feel
we
like
have,
Biden's
according to Border Patrol, who is
You feel like
great,
Biden's
and by
what?
the way, who endorsed
Struggling.
me for president, but I
Yeah,
won't
it
say
seems
that.
like it's the way
They
it's like.
endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But
Brandon,
look,
was
we
going
had the
in.
safest border in
Brandon.
history.
Oh
Now
my
we have the
goodness,
worst border in
Brandon.
history. There's never been anything like it, and people
So
are
he started
dying
to sing
all
him
over the
up.
place, including the people that are coming out
Getting them.
in
Thank you, President
caravans.
Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, under his administration, killed an Al-Qaeda person come in and his administration, killed three American soldiers.
Yeah, so
That's
it's
the
not
only
funny, but this
terrorist.
guy's messing it all
I'm
up.
not saying that no
Not
terrorist
making
ever
sense
got through with
anymore.
the idea
Yeah.
they're emptying their prisons.
It seems like
welcoming
he's
people.
been
That's
drilled,
simply not true.
and
There's no
and with
data
these facts he
supporting
normally
said.
wouldn't have
Once
them.
again, he's
But
exaggerating.
he's
lying.
not remembering, and he's messing them
President
up.
Trump, staying on the topic of
Yeah.
immigration, you
I
said
think
that
he
you're going to
just
carry
crashed
out,
that
quote,
one.
the
That
largest
seemed like
domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed 3 people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the 2 greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge
Soleimani, oh my
impact on
goodness.
everything, not just
He
border.
started World
on
War III
everything.
when he killed Soleimani.
He's the one that killed people with the bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying.
Soleimani was
and
going
also
to
killing
Iraq
our citizens when they
for
come
a
in.
peace
We are
conference,
living
for a
right
peace
now in a rat
agreement.
nest. They're
And that's where
killing
he was
people
killed.
in New York, in
Made the
California,
Iraqis
in
go
every
crazy.
in the union, because we
And
don't have
the
borders anymore.
and
Every state is now a
the
border. And because of his
the
ridiculous,
the Iranians just
insane, and very
decided, I
stupid
mean, that was
policies,
the point where the
people are
Iranians
coming in
decided
and they're
we can't
killing
deal with the
our
Americans
citizens
anymore.
at a level
And
that
so
we've
when
never
Biden got
seen
into
before with
office,
migrant crime.
he
I
tried
call it
the
migrant crime. They're
the Biden
killing our
administration
citizens at a level that we've
tried
never seen before.
desperately
And
to
you're
get back
reading
into
it
the
like these
Iran
3 incredible
accord, the
young
Iran
girls over the
agreement,
last few
and they
days.
just won't do it.
One
They
of them,
won't
I
do it
just spoke to
anymore.
the mother.
After
And he just had the
Soleimani,
funeral for this girl,
was
12 years old.
assassinated.
This is horrible what's taken
That's
place.
it.
What's taken place in our
And
country.
they know that even
We're
if they make an
literally
agreement with Trump,
an
is he going to go back on
uncivilized
it?
country
Americans
now.
are
He doesn't
constantly
want it to
breaking
be.
their
He just
treaties.
doesn't know. He
So
opened the borders.
yeah.
Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we
Yeah.
have to get a lot of these people out, and we have to get
Ridiculous.
them out fast
And
because
so
they're going to
now,
destroy our country.
you know,
Just take a look at where they're living.
one of the
They're
things I
living in
fear,
luxury
because there's a
hotels
lot of
in New
immigrants.
York
I mean, we
City and
have
other places. Our
California is taking
veterans
in
are on
more
the street.
people
They're
than
dying
any other
because he doesn't
state,
care about our
you
veterans.
know,
He doesn't
from
like
the
the
border,
military at all.
and we don't really
He
even
doesn't care
notice
about
it.
our veterans. Nobody
We
gives
don't
a
really
damn.
notice it.
The
It's like
highest
it's
approval
not
rating
that.
for
It's
veterans
not
taking
like,
care of
oh,
the VA.
there's an immigrant. You know,
Joyce, we've
like
gotten rid of
there's
all the
so
things
many
that I
immigrants
approved.
here
Joyce, I got
anyway
through
that
Congress,
it's not
all of the different
something
things
that
I approved.
is even
They
noticeable
abandoned.
in
We had
California.
by far the
You know,
highest,
we
and now
we don't
it's
have
down
enough
to less than
housing,
half
but that's we don't
because
have
he's
enough
done all
housing
these
for
great things
everybody.
that we did.
So,
And I think he did it just because I
but it
approved
is a
it,
big
which is
state. We
crazy.
do have a lot of
But he has killed so
space,
many people
and
at our border by
Thank you,
allowing
one of the
President
all
things
of
I
this people to
fear
come in.
is
It's a
that
very sad day,
it's
you
going
know,
to turn
America.
into a trail of
Every single
tears
thing
type
he
of
said is a lie.
situation where they're
Every
going to make
single
all
word.
these people
Example,
go back
veterans are a hell of a
and
lot
just
better off.
like
I passed the PACT
trot
Act.
them over the
1
line. Things
million of
are
them now
bad.
have parents and their
I
families
mean,
have.
as
Their
you
families
know, I am
have
not
what happened.
I am not a
Everyone
Biden
was
fan.
ignoring
I
for
am not a
almost
Biden fan
they're all
at
being
all,
covered now. And he opposed his
at all.
group opposed
But
that. We're also in a situation where we have great
um,
respect for veterans. My son spent a
Okay.
year in Iraq.
I
And they were
do
wearing next to one of those burn
Go ahead.
pits, came
I,
back with
I like
stage 4
Biden more
glioblastoma.
than
I was
I
recently
like Biden's
That's
cabinet
fine. That's
in
fine.
France.
more than Trump's
I
cabinet.
checked right now, right?
And
The
But I
thing
can't
is
say
that
I like
about
Biden more.
those
you can
heroes
buy
that
a
died.
U.S.
I went to
citizenship
the World War II
apparently
cemetery,
for
World War I cemetery,
$900,000 to
refused
$2
to go
million.
there. He was standing with his 4-star
So
general,
it's
and
called
he told me, he said, I
citizenship
don't
by
want to go in there
investment.
because they're a bunch of
hmm
loser
So
hmm
suckers. My
Lots
son
of
was
countries
not a
have that,
loser,
though.
not a sucker.
Lots of
yeah,
countries
You're a
have it.
sucker.
yeah.
You're the
Yeah.
loser.
President
Canada,
Trump.
Canada has a big time.
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it
And a
up.
lot
He
of
was in
those
a
people who
third-rate
have that much
magazine
money
that's
are
failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He
right.
put it in commercials. We've
A lot of those people
notified
have that
him.
much money. Are
We have
what?
19 people
Are
that said I didn't
criminals.
say it. And think of it. Who would say
Not all
I'm
of
at a
them.
cemetery or I'm
They're just
talking
business
about our
people.
veterans? Because nobody's taking better care. I'm so glad this came
They
up.
have the money
And
to
you
be
brought it up.
criminal.
There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
4-star general standing to your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right. Thank you so much.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy. I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander in chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged.
He's right
Russia
about that. He's right about
what
a lot
happened.
more
He was
people
so
have
bad
died
with
than they say.
Afghanistan. It was such a
You
horrible.
listen to public radio and say, and
embarrassing
they'll say
moment
the
in the
amount of
history
dead
of
is
our country.
even. It's not even
When
close.
Putin watched that and
Like
he
3
saw the
times as many
incompetence, and he said,
Ukrainians have
fired
died
those
than
generals,
Russians.
like I fired the one that you
And
mentioned.
those numbers
So
are
he's got no
high.
love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about
Earlier when
his
Biden
dream.
said no
The
troops
difference
were
is
killed on
he
his
never
watch,
would have invaded
that didn't sound true to him.
Ukraine. Never.
Yeah,
Just
it's
like
not.
Israel would have never
It's not.
in a
Yeah.
We have
million years
American
by Hamas.
soldiers fighting
You know
on
why?
the side of the
Because
Israelis,
Iran was
and they have
broke with
died.
me. I
We have
wouldn't let
American
anybody do
soldiers
business
fighting
with
on the
them. They ran
side
out
of
of
the
money. They were
Ukrainians,
broke.
and
They
they
had no
have
money for
died.
Hamas. They
So
had no money for anything.
we're not hearing
Looking
about
for-
this.
That's
They're
why
hearing
you had
about it in
no
other
terror at
countries, but
all
they're not hearing about
during
it
my
here.
administration.
So
This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president, they attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place. Number one. Number two, we got over 100,000
Ever heard of that? I
Americans
didn't hear
and
about
others
that.
out
Brain damage?
of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, and do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. Wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I
as
never
come back
said
to you
that.
for 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the
No, they're
territory
not
in Ukraine.
acceptable. No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more.
but it has started.
Ukraine. He's
But
given
it has
$200 billion.
started.
That's a lot of
The
money.
thing
I
is,
don't think there's
we
ever
can't
been
go
anything
back in
like it. Every
time.
time that
We have to.
Zelensky comes to the
He
country,
will have
that's where he
to
makes $1 billion.
step
He says,
in if
"Go
he
for nothing."
wins, and
I'm
he
not
will have to
knocking him. I'm
deal
not
with
knocking
the state
anything.
of things
I'm only
as they
saying
lay.
the
And
money that we're
so,
spending
what's
on
he
this
going to do?
war, and we shouldn't be spending.
Many people
It
are
should have
already
never
talking
happened.
about that.
I will
That
have that war
Russia will take
settled
some
between Putin
territory.
and
And
Zelensky
when we say
as
take,
president-elect
what
before
they
I take
really
office on
wanted
January
was
20th.
were
I'll have
those
that war
places
settled.
to be
People
independent.
being killed
But it
so
sounds,
needlessly,
but it
so
sounds like
stupidly.
because
I will
there's
get
so
it
much
settled,
Western
and I'll get it settled
interference
fast before I take
that
office.
it's almost de facto
President
like
Biden, you
the
have a
Soviet
minute.
Union is
The fact
reforming.
is that
Like
Putin is a
we will
war
just
criminal.
have new pieces,
He's
like the
killed
Donbass
thousands and
or
thousands of people.
Crimea.
He has made
Those
one
places
thing
will
clear.
become
He
new
wants to
states
reestablish what
in
was part of the Soviet
kind of a
Empire,
new,
not just a piece. He
not
wants all
Soviet
of
maybe,
Ukraine.
but
That's what he
Russian
wants.
Republic.
And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll
Yeah, there's
stop
actually a lot
when
of
he
also-
Like a federation of
Ukraine?
states.
What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and
Also
thought to
bullshit.
still be alive are 5 Americans.
Most of the
Israel's
dead
response has killed thousands
were
of
killed by
Palestinians and
Israelis
created a
from Apache
humanitarian crisis in
helicopters
Gaza.
that were
President
American.
Biden,
Hamas
put
does not have
forward a
Apache helicopters.
to resolve this conflict. But so far, Hamas
I
has
think they're going to
not
agree on this
released
topic. We'll see.
the remaining hostages, and
They
Israel is
might.
continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward, which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones
It's
standing
not
up,
true.
pushing
It's not
hard
true at all.
to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're finding the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so they're two different things. Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
What you have is Hamas is one organization. What you have there are many organizations, at least like 4 or 5. So, and
maybe more
Hamas doesn't have all the hostages. All these other organizations have them, and they have to go and kind of find out where they are. Hamas doesn't know where all these people are.
General of NATO said Trump
They have to coordinate it,
I've ever seen.
and that's
They
difficult.
wouldn't have any. They were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting all. You got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let
Israel
him go
is the
and
one.
let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. You're going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have our strength lies in our alliances as well. There may be a big ocean, but we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace.
I hope they know about this.
No major war in Europe has ever been able to contain just to Europe.
Koreans.
President Trump, just to follow up,
They did
would
get
you
it
support the creation of an
brag
independent
about it, too.
Palestinian state in
Yeah.
order to achieve peace
Yeah.
in the region?
The
I
president
have to
does.
see, but before we do that,
So Republic of
the
Korea.
problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States.
Yep,
And
the
they will
EU,
rent no cars, no, they don't want
the
anything.
EU
that
got
we have.
together
We're supposed to
because
take their
they
cars,
wanted
their food, their everything,
economic parity
their
with the US.
agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this. I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question. Would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time? And they said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying everybody's bills.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, We had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like
interesting deflection. Like
reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm
now,
sure some.
I will say this.
Where he
I
goes
don't
after
think that
people
January 6th is how people are going to make decisions in the next election. You know, at this point, do people really care about January 6th? I don't think so. I think people care about how expensive it is to live. I mean, I can tell you from a West Coast perspective, housing and feeding yourself, those are the two things that people care the most about. Because, I mean, food is very expensive. Maybe a little bit less in
I was responsible for this.
than certain other places, but food and housing are extremely expensive here. And that's what people care about. They care about relief. They care about
I think
bring
that
some help.
They asked me to
What's
go
that?
make a speech.
I think
I
that
could
Jan
see what
6
was happening.
created a
Everybody
small
was saying
little
they're going to be there on
ecosystem
January 6th. They're going to be
of
there.
people like,
And I said,
either
you know
law
what? There's a
enforcement
lot of
that's
people
making money
coming.
off
You could feel
investigating
it. You
Jan
could feel it
6,
too, and you could
or
feel
like
it.
the lawyers who
And I
are
said,
working with
they ought to have some
people who are
National Guard or
jailed
whatever.
on Jan 6.
And I
You know what I
offered
mean?
it to her, and she
So
now admits that
I think it's
she
probably more of
turned
an
it
East Coast thing
down.
because more people
And
from
it
the East
was
Coast were
the
at that
same
event.
day she was.
Not that it's really important.
Right.
I agree with you.
That's
Now,
right.
most normal people
She
forgot
said,
about it,
I
I
take
think,
full
right? Yeah.
responsibility
But
Yeah.
for
it's a little
January 6th.
ecosystem that formed of people that
President
make
Biden?
money off of it, and
Right.
Look, he
not
encouraged
as big,
those
I'm not
folks
saying
to
it's
go
a
up
big
to Capitol
ecosystem.
Hill.
There's a
Number
little
one.
ecosystem.
I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that no. He went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court, and they said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He did do a damn thing.
Well, some people, I mean, Fiorella
Should
from Convoy Couch, she was there. And she said where he gave his speech was like well over a mile away from the Capitol.
Thank you, President Biden.
So there were people already there at the Capitol. So it wasn't that they heard something he said and then went over. There was already a crowd at the White House, and those people were kind of independent. It was a different crowd. It was a separate crowd.
If I didn't bring in
At
the
least
National Guard, that city would
that's
have
what she
been
says.
destroyed.
So-
I was there the day
When you
before,
look at all
and
of the-
I saw her there.
They took over.
Ah,
They did
interesting.
so
Okay. So she
I
was there.
all
Yeah.
set to bring in the National Guard. They heard that. They saw.
Yeah,
them
because you were
coming,
there
and they left
for
immediately.
Force the Vote.
The next day was stop.
So
And
awful.
I heard that there was
One of
the other thing that she said was that there was
The
more
Select Committee,
law enforcement for
basically
Force the
two
Vote
horrible
than there was the
Republicans
next
that are all
day. That's what she
gone
said.
now out of office, and Democrats.
She
all
said there was
gone.
Yeah, it was
tons of law
weird. Yeah, it
enforcement
was
for Force the Vote.
Destroyed and deleted all
It was
the
like she
information.
I would
said
say
it was something like 2 to
quite a
1.
bit. Yeah, it was like why?
We were
Like,
right. And
Yeah,
they
and that's
deleted
what she
and
said.
destroyed all
She
of
was
the
like,
information. They should
why?
go
It wasn't. It was completely
There
peaceful.
There was a lot of
They
cops
go
when we
to
went
Thank
to
you, President
Stewart's.
Trump. President
That's
Biden, I
what
want to
she
give you a
said.
Look
minute.
for
Yeah.
people's.
The only person
Party,
on this
yeah.
stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now.
That guy Nick Brown is
And
real
the fact
weird.
of the
Like,
matter is, he isn't.
I don't know
What
why.
he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up in Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted. The idea that they didn't kill somebody, just went in and broke down doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned over desks, turned them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots, come on. When I asked him the first two debates we had, first time around, I said, will you denounce the Proud Boys? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by. The idea he's refusing, will you denounce these guys? Will you denounce the people we're talking about now? Will you denounce the people who attacked that Capitol? What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful.
Okay, so this is the setup. Okay, this is the
My
setup.
retribution is going to be
Obviously,
success.
CNN was
Well, he
not
talks
gonna
about a
not
convicted felon.
like
His son is a
kind of
convicted felon
scrap him. He
at a
kind
very
of they
high
kind of
level.
lured
His
him
son is
in, and
convicted
now they're gonna
felon
kind of
numerous
circle
other times.
him
Should
with
have been
these kinds of
convicted before, but
questions,
his
right?
Justice
That was
Department
this
let
is a total
the statute
setup.
of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with
You
all
saw
of the
the
things
Hillary
that he's
Clinton
done.
against Donald
He's done
Trump when they had
horrible
the little
things.
kid in the
All of the
audience and the
death
whole thing
cause
was
at
staged.
the border,
Yeah,
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 they
telling
do
the
stage this stuff.
Ukrainian
yeah,
people
yeah.
that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with the son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond?
I
Go
actually
ahead. I'll
know
give you a
someone
minute
who
to
actually
respond.
investigated
The
those charges.
idea that
Not
I
all
did
of them
anything
have to
wrong
do with the
relative
Stormy
to what you're
Daniels.
talking
There's
about
other
is
charges from
outrageous.
other stuff.
It's simply a lie.
Oh,
Number one.
really?
30 plus
Number
felonies.
two,
Yeah.
the idea that
interesting.
you
Not
have the
all of
right
Stormy
to seek
Daniels at all.
retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having
He said it too. He said it too when he had his marbles.
What are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give you a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one. Number two, that was a case that was started and moved. They moved a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal. He basically went after his political opponent because he thought it was going to damage me. But when the public found out about these cases, because they understand it better than he does, he has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these cases, you know what they did? My poll numbers went up, way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has
Oh my
ever
God.
taken
I wonder why they keep
So
doing
much
it.
money. It was
Yeah, I
over
know what's happening.
$200 million, Ed.
And it's a guy that's
Over
after his political
$200
opponent 'cause he
million.
can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy.
And a lot of
Do you
it was
believe
from
that the
Silicon
tens of millions
Valley.
of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road coming around. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face.
You know, in
I
New
don't know
York,
what
they
the
took
juries
away
will
like
do,
building.
but I do know he has a
right?
real problem.
They took
And so
away
the
what?
fact
In New
that-
York, they
Did
confiscated.
you ever
the
think you heard any
businesses.
president say that I'm going
Oh,
to
his businesses?
You ever hear any president say that I
Wow.
thought Hitler
They
had some good
confiscated a
ideas?
lot of his
What
stuff.
got me involved to run the first place
Damn.
after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young
What is
woman got
this?
killed. I
What is
spoke to the
this
mother,
he's talking about?
and they asked him, they said,
What is this?
what do you think of those people? The ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones he said, I think they're fine people on both sides. What American president would ever say, Nazis coming out of fields, carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas, were fine people? This is a guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said.
Okay, I
This
put
guy
a
has no sense of
put
American
something in the chat.
democracy.
You could
President
see
Trump.
there's a link.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally
Uh,
wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on that. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every anchor every reasonable anchor has debunked it.
What's
And just the
Charlottesville?
other day it came out. where it was
Charlottesville
full
was the one where that woman that someone
nonsense
plowed into
stories.
the
He wrote
crowd
that.
with the
He
car
didn't run
and
because of
killed this
Charlottesville.
white
He
woman.
used that as an excuse to run.
It was like
Okay, I
one of
didn't know
those
President
first,
It's
yeah.
debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time. And the
I've been doing
idea
all this
that
stuff.
somehow that's the only reason I ran. I ran
Do
because I felt that
um
like this guy could get elected. If he
I live in
thought
Charlottesville.
they were good people coming out of that forest,
I don't believe it.
carrying those woods, carrying those torches,
what
and he did
question
this
would you
way,
ask if you could ask a
couldn't have served
question?
me president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw what happened on
I
January
know what
6th.
I would
We
ask.
saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top
I'm not
cabinet
I
officers
don't think about talking.
refused to endorse him this time. His
I
vice
got to,
president
actually, I
had
gave
I, I would ask.
that company gave me a fist
why
bump.
they
I
know
got
him
it on
well.
video.
They serve with him.
I don't have
Why
it
are
out
people endorsing him?
But-
I would
Thank you,
ask.
President Biden. We're going to be right
about,
back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
Now I would ask, you know, basically, his Trump has one of the worst cabinets that in American history. I mean, I thought George Bush had a horrible cabinet, but basically, Trump had one of the worst cabinets in memory, right?
yeah, it was
So-
all like establishment. doing
Yeah,
shit.
and none of these people are going to be like, supposedly they don't want to deal with him anymore. They don't want to do this and that. They're all a bunch of hypocrites and like, suck ups when it comes to being like beat or whatever. But is he gonna have Nikki Haley on his cabinet again? Is he gonna have John Bolton? Is he gonna have who's he gonna have? Is he gonna call back
Gonna have
Steve
his loyalists. You know
Is he
how
gonna-
he is now.
Mike Pompeo is absolutely, dude should be at The Hague. So should Bolton. So should Nikki Haley. All these people are horrible. They're some of the worst people that he brought back. And so, the question is, it's like, dude, you can't do this all by yourself. And
He'll bring someone in, then he'll get rid of them.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
who?
that's what he does.
Like your political judgment in the past was terrible. These people are horrible. They've all said absolutely horrible things with you. Betsy DeVos, oh my God, was she a horrible secretary? One of the worst Department of Education secretaries we've ever had since since it started by Carter. Carter started it. So I'm not even sure if he's just going to get rid of it. It makes me think that the reason why he's not talking about appointees is because he's going to get rid of a lot of these departments and just give the money to the state. I've heard him say that about certain agencies. So I'm wondering, okay.
Such as? Which agencies?
Well, I've heard him say that why don't we just give these things back to the states and let the states handle it? That's what they did before.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the Department of Education was started by Carter. And so it didn't exist before that. Before they would just give the money to the states, and then they it was a state by state. It was a state by state, issue as to education, what you wanted to do. The Department of Education started establishing federal standards, and now people are bristling about federal standards in Common Core. I don't think Common Core is so bad. But I don't see how there's a problem with people having a particular level of education. However, how much, excess is there? How much dross? How much, how much is being soaked up in, and basically the administration and just sort of bullshit from the Department of Education, and therefore, or thereby, giving less money to the states for education. And I know because California, I mean, Newsom just raised it considerably, but in California, we were only getting like 8,100 a student, and that's really low. It's like, it's one of those, thank God for Mississippi moments, because we were the second from the bottom, and we're
No,
the
I
largest
actually,
state and second from the bottom.
I say a lot of like, I actually give a little speech when I do my performances. And I say actually I'm a victim of the educational system because our educational system is not teaching our children the political education. And the fact is that they're just learning to be how to make the teacher happy.
Mhm.
They don't
Yeah.
really learn, right? Yeah. Like for
Yeah.
example, let's be honest. We say we care about our kids, but then they eat prison lunches in the school. Are you
Yeah.
serious? Like, what's more
Yeah.
important for a child's health and their mental development than the food that they're eating?
Yeah.
That's going to become part of their body and their mind, literally, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
unfortunately, we just embrace what's cheap and easy. Oh, they're talking again. Okay, let's see what this
Yeah.
guy's saying. Let me go back to the thing. Hold up. Sorry. Honestly, I think this is a lot of theater. Let's see what they have to say.
The segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. In addition to that,
I
we
wonder if
find
they were
that
given the questions
the
ahead of
impact
time, were they?
on the choice that Black families have to make
I
relative
think
to
that Biden got
childcare
the questions
is
beforehand, probably.
incredibly difficult. When we did
Yeah,
the
I
first major
wonder.
piece of legislation in the past,
They already know
I
to do
was
that.
able to
Donna Brazil
reduce
did that, and
Black
then she got busted.
child care
Yeah,
costs
yeah.
This is like
by
the regular
cutting in half.
practice.
In half.
Yeah.
We got to make sure
Actually,
we
just so
provide
you
for
know,
child care
for
costs.
the debate
We
that's
got to
coming
make
up on
because
Sunday,
when you provide that child care
I'm
protections,
actually working with
you
with
increase
the
economic
candidates to
growth
write
because more people
put
can be in
the questions
the
together.
job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to Black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any Black family first-time home buyer should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those Black families and those Black individuals who provided had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, doctor, and anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest was forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for Black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right. It's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing Black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New Scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the Black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking Black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking Black jobs, and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you. President Biden?
There was no inflation when I became president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back, 15% unemployment. He decimated the economy, absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time. There were no jobs. We provided thousands of millions of jobs for individuals who are in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, if the ACA has increased, I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA again, and they're going to try again if they win. We find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing any, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on. But
It's amazing. Like they're both just kind of throwing out these things that are complete, like a misrepresentation of the facts.
Another
And they're just like going on. They're just going with it.
2023 was
just kind of like lying and just like saying whatever.
Communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes.
I was watching this. I was watching the pre-show,
Former
right?
President Trump, you've
And
vowed
some
to
dude was
end
like,
your opponent's
"Oh, I feel like
climate
Biden's so
initiatives, but
trustworthy."
will you take any
But then
action?
you saw the video. He's like,
Biden is
slow the
trustworthy?
climate crisis.
Well, let me just go
but
back.
no, they
to
said
what
like
said
he
about
seems so
the police,
trustworthy, right?
how close
They
the
were
police
talking
are
about his
him.
strength as a
Almost
debater.
every police
But then I
whip in
remember
the
that
nation
time
from
when he was
every
like,
state
"I graduated at the top of
is
my
supporting
class," and he was like lying
Donald
and
J.
everything.
Trump.
Remember that?
Almost every police
They're
group.
both. They're
And what
both
he's
doing
done
it.
to the black
Yeah, they're both
population is
thinking
horrible,
it's off.
including the fact that
It's
for 10
not
years
really.
he called them super
The
predators.
American
We
public
can't
is
in the
not really
1990s. We
informed
can't
about
Like
forget
it's
that.
kind of like it's
Super
like
predators was
neither
his
one of
name,
you are like
and he
telling the
called
truth.
it
It's
to
just
them,
like
and
I mean,
they've taken
I
great
saw
offense at
something
it,
with
and now they see it
RFK
happening.
Jr. He
But
was
when they see
saying,
what I did for
"Oh,
criminal
Trump's
justice
such an
reform
entertainer.
and
He
for
just
the
makes up
historically
facts and then just
black
completely believes them."
colleges and
It's like,
universities, where I funded them and got them all
it's
funded,
so true.
and
But
the
they both do
opportunity
it.
zones
They're both doing
with
it.
Tim, as you know, Tim
I
Scott
think that
was
most
incredible. He
people who
did
are
a great
watching
job.
like have
Great
already
senator
picked who
from
they like.
South Carolina.
I don't really
He
see
came to
this
me with the
making
idea, and it was
this
a great
tonight's
idea. It's
debate
one of the most
making a
successful
huge change.
economic
I don't
development
think
acts
really
ever in the country.
like Biden's doing
Opportunity
bad
zones,
enough for like
and
his
the
people
biggest
like that are
beneficiary
loyalist
are
to him.
blacks, and that's
Yeah,
why
but you know what?
we have the best numbers with that.
I
There'll be
think
group.
that
something better, but
so
Nike
far,
ever,
so far
best thing
Biden
ever.
is
I read
doing
this
better,
morning where ever
much
best
better
expected,
than I
numbers.
expected. I mean,
He's
don't you
lost
think? I mean, we thought
much
they were.
of the
I
black
was
I
expecting
think most
population.
people
I was
thought he was
expecting
just
worse
going
He's
to
done a
stuff.
freeze.
horrible
Oh,
job for black
totally.
Oh
people.
yeah, like
He's
he's
Totally.
already
also
had a
done a
couple
horrible
flubs,
job
but
for
like I thought
Hispanics.
the whole
But
thing
wait
would
till
be
you
a
see
flub.
these
Like
Yeah, me
millions of
too.
people pouring into our
have
country.
you seen
And
the
so
video
that's
of
why
him
I
like
thought,
yeah.
And
I
it's
thought, you know
already
what?
started, and
Something,
you
I'm
haven't
going to
seen
make a
anything yet.
contrarian
It's
bet
a
here.
disaster.
I'm going to think that he's going to do a
38
lot better than
seconds
people
left.
expect.
President Trump, will you take
So,
any action as president
You saw the video
to
of him
slow
by
the
like the
climate
helicopter where
crisis?
he's like completely
So I
lost and went
want
in the wrong direction.
absolutely immaculate clean water,
wandering
and I
away.
want absolutely clean air. And we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And
We
yet,
had
during
H2O.
my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my
But
top
no, the
environmental
least
people gave me
regulation.
that statistic
Maybe
just
I don't
before I
know.
walked on the stage.
Sounds a
Actually,
little weird, but okay.
Yeah.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The
Like they're just
idea
saying stuff to
that
win.
anything
You know
he
what I mean?
says
Like
is true.
that's
I've passed the
where they're at right now.
most extensive climate change legislation in history. In history, we find ourselves, and by the way, black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have those. They don't have the kind of contributors that they have.
You know,
to
I just feel like
build these
HBCUs aren't what
laboratories
they
and the
used to
like.
be.
Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just don't have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech.
I
We're in a
wrote for
situation where the
the
idea that
HBCUs
he is
asking
claiming
for help with the
to
Asian
have
American
done
curriculum.
something that had the cleanest water,
They didn't respond.
cleanest water.
Uh-huh.
He hadn't done a damn thing with anybody.
Another thing is that
He,
Howard
the
University
Paris
getting
Peace Accord,
P. Diddy
climate
an
accord.
honorary
I
doctorate
immediately
degree.
joined it.
Oh, they pulled
Because
it.
if we
You didn't hear that?
1.5
Yeah, which is
degrees
good,
Celsius,
but you know, it just shows
there's
that
no way back.
academia in general
humanity
has
is
gotten
climate
wrapped up
change.
with the
And he didn't do a
elites.
damn thing
You know
about
what I
it.
mean?
He wants to undo
Yeah.
all that I've
Not
done.
just HBCUs, but
the
they
Paris
haven't been
Accord was
immune
going to
from
cost us
that.
$1 trillion.
They got caught up.
And China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones. It was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it. And it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Well, I can tell you this. Trump did sign
The idea
something
is
that
that
people could use
we
Medicare
we were
to buy
concentrate or
medication
not,
abroad so
we're
they
not
could
members
buy
of the
uh,
parasite. How can we
medication
do anything
in
that
Canada
the
that
United
was much
States can't
cheaper
give
than
us
what they sell it
under
here.
control? One
And
of
as
the
soon as
largest
Biden
agents
got
in the
into
world,
office, he
number
killed that.
one. We're making significant
So
progress. By
he signed, Trump
2035, we
signed
will have crucially now.
an executive
We have
order,
made
and the
significant
Biden
Yeah, I
progress.
thought
administration.
Biden's answer
We
earlier
continue to
also
make
was kind of
progress.
like pro
We set up a climate corps for
pharmacology
thousands of young
industry.
people to learn how to
So
deal
I
with
wasn't
that,
maybe
just like
thrilled with it.
Peace Corps.
Mm.
And
He's like, we leveled the
we're
price on all
moving
the
in
medications
directions
we
that are
get
going to
because the
significantly
government's
change
supplementing
the
it.
elements of cause of
And
pollution.
the government starts
But the
paying in, then
idea
all the prices
that
go up.
he claims that he has the biggest heart up here and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
Oh, go ahead, Biden.
So every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make
I thought he
ends
was
meet.
gonna.
For
I
many
thought he was gonna
older
force it through. I thought he was
Americans,
gonna do
Social
it, but
Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will
they were
see
gonna
their
let him
benefits
finish too.
cut
You know what I mean?
in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
yes, make the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share. Right now, everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old.
No,
The
it's more
idea
than that. 6% is only what they pay in
Well,
Social Security.
everybody, they pay, the millionaires pay 1%, 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent. But the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare both times. And that's what. And if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that I believe supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is we're in a situation where I talk about education for Black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants, another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation.
So
for
Kalench
the
has
last
a bet
8
on
years.
has like a poll on
I've never
his
seen anybody lie
Facebook.
like this guy.
But how many
He
times they can
lies.
say
I've
the
never
word
seen it.
student
He
loans?
could look you in the face. So
Oh, interesting.
many other
I
things
voted
too.
0.
And we mentioned
Oh,
that.
interesting.
We
Alan voted
mentioned
4+.
Russia, Ukraine,
4+.
everything.
Oh, that's
is a
interesting.
lie. It's
He said
I
he
don't
was
think they mentioned it once. Did they mention it even once?
They got
the
close right
losers
there.
and
Yeah.
sucker story
They
that
got a
he made
little
up.
close.
It's a total
Yeah.
lie in the military. It's a disgrace.
Pell
But
Grants
Social
are,
Security, he's
That's right.
destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid.
So this is
They're
interesting.
putting it in
So
our
he must really
hospitals.
think
They're
that
taking the
people
place
think
of
that
our
immigration is our
there.
biggest
What they're
problem.
doing to the VA, to our veterans is unbelievable. Our
Notice
veterans are
how
living
that's
in the street, and
that's
these people are
Trump's
living in
go-to.
luxury hotels.
Notice that.
He doesn't
Yeah.
know what he's doing.
There's
And
another candidate who's there like
it's
his
really
name is,
coming back. I've never
Jonathan
seen such
Ronaldo.
anger
I mean,
in our
They've been really going
they
on.
they tried to do a
President Biden?
gotcha with him
The
with
idea
January
that
6th,
veterans
but I
will
don't
not
think that
be
people
taken
care
care of.
about
I
that.
told you
He
before.
keeps
By the
reverting
way, when I
things,
said suckers and
everything
losers, he
back to
said,
the open, quote
now
unquote,
it's after
open
he
borders.
fired that
I
gentleman.
don't know
And
about the. I
That
don't.
gentleman got
I've been hanging with
fired
some Republicans over
because
here.
he's the one that
uh-huh.
acknowledged that that's what
Or
he said. He
you
was the
know,
one standing with Trump
Republican
when he
adjacent.
said it. Number
And
one. Number two,
for them,
the
migrants have
idea
been
that
kind
we're
of
going to
like,
be in a
especially in the
situation where
political arena,
all these
they love talking
millions
about,
and
but they see
millions,
that
like Peter talks
as
about it,
a way to win.
illegal aliens are coming into the
Interesting.
country
Okay.
and taking away
So
our jobs.
that's
There's a
what he
reason
must
why
have been
we have
coached,
the
and
fastest
that's what
growing
he's
economy in the
doing.
world.
And he's
Reason why
getting
we have the most
people
successful
to,
economy in the
I
world.
mean,
We're doing
he
better
I'm
than
went
very
any
glad
other
that
nation in
kind
the
of
world.
data is backing
And by
that
the
up
way,
with
those 15
polls or
Nobel
something,
laureates he
because
talked about being phony,
there's so
those
and
much
he
15
was,
Nobel
but
laureates,
here's
economists,
the
they all
interesting
said
thing.
that
He
if Trump
said
was elected,
on a
we'd have a
podcast
recession
that
and inflation is going to increase
he
and
would
go up.
give
By the way, worst
every
president in history,
immigrant a green
159
card
presidential
if
scholars
they
voted
got a
that he
diploma
was the
from an
worst
American
president in the history of the
university.
United States of America.
President Biden, thank
So
you so much. Let's turn to the
so if
cost
they
of
went to
child
college
care, which
here,
many American
that they would
families
be
struggle
allowed to
to
stay.
afford. President Trump, both you and President
It's very
Biden
interesting.
have
I
tried
know a
to
lot of
address
people
this
had to go
issue,
back to their home
but the
I
country.
don't
average
like
cost of
college.
child care in this country has risen to
It's
more
too
than
expensive.
$11,000 a year per child
There's
for
no
many
reason for it to be
families.
so
The
expensive.
cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You'd pay a price for it, but they were no good. I inherited these people. I didn't put him there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire
Funny
anybody
how
that
he's,
allowed our
it's
country to
funny
be
how
destroyed?
he's
Joe, our country
totally
is being
like harping
destroyed
on
as
this,
you and
but
I
he's
stood
not
up here and
talking
spent a
about
lot of time on this
the
debate.
drugs that
This
are
didn't
coming
do
over.
anything. He's the
That
worst
and how
president.
we've
You
had
said about me
a
because
porous
I said it.
border when you talk
Look,
about
he's the
drugs and
worst
fentanyl,
president in the history of our
and he
country.
he
He's
isn't talking
destroyed
about
our
that.
country.
That's very
All of a sudden,
interesting
he's
to
trying to
me.
get a little tough on the border. He came out with
That's a problem
a
here.
nothing deal,
Fentanyl
and
is a
he
big
reduced it a little
problem
bit.
on the West
Little
You know
Coast.
what's kind of
this
funny?
much.
Remember,
It's
I had the
insignificant. He
22
wants open borders.
Unified
He
Platform
wants our
series,
country to either be
Mhm.
destroyed or he
right?
wants to pick up those
So
people as voters.
most, right? I think the
And
two
I
candidates
don't think we
maybe
just
three,
can't let
right?
it
Yeah, but
happen.
there
If
were two
he
Republican candidates
wins
that
this
filled it out,
election,
right?
our country doesn't
And they
have a
both agreed
chance,
that,
not even a chance,
whoever
of coming out of
interacts
this
with us
rut.
in real life,
We
those are our
probably
neighbors,
won't have a
those are our
country
friends.
left
You know what I
anymore.
mean?
That's how bad it is. He is the worst in
So
history by
that
far.
actually
Thank you,
is
President Trump.
different.
President Biden?
But
You-
We're
there
the
was
most
you-
definitely a
admired
change
country in the
where
world.
Republican
We're
Party
the
leadership
United
put out
States
the
of
word
America.
somehow.
They're not
We have
answering the
nothing but
question.
capacity. We're the finest
Yeah.
military in the history of the world.
Yeah,
The
they
finest in the
both have
history
their
of the
own
world.
talking
No
points.
one can stop. No one.
They're saying whatever they want. They're not even
Yeah.
keeping to the.
Number two,
Yeah, they
the
were
idea
before, but now they're
that we're
just
talking
going
Yeah,
off.
now they're just straight up. They're
I
just
wasn't
ignoring
joking.
everything.
Look it up.
Yeah.
Go
They're
online.
just saying what they wanted to say.
159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians, they've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history, one through best to worst. They said he was the worst in all of American history. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with child care, he did for virtually nothing to child care. We should significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the availability of women and men or single parents to be able to go back to work. And we should encourage businesses to have
Thank you, President
child care
Biden.
facilities.
President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable, if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me, I'll show you, I will show you. And they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the two of
Now,
you,
this is
are gonna
really
pay 45
interesting.
times.
Ivanka
All my life, I'd grow up and
Trump
I'd see
was
politicians
very
talking about
instrumental
cutting taxes.
in
No one cut taxes as
really
I said.
insisting that the
businesses,
child
Apple and all these
tax
companies, they were bringing
credit
money
was
back into our
increased
country.
significantly,
The
and it
worst
was
president in history by far,
during
and
Trump's.
everybody knows it.
Now, for people who
All
are
right.
singles,
Fact
he
of the
raised their
matter is
taxes
that he's dead wrong
crazy.
about.
But it's
He has
funny.
increased them.
Here's something where he could have
He
said, "Well, I
increased-
did
he will
that. I did
increase
this, da, da, da,
the,
da." And now he's
taxes
just
on
like,
middle class
instead,
people.
he wants to talk
I
about
said I'd
himself,
never raise the
you know,
taxes on
being
anybody
the
that makes
best or
less
the
than
worst
$400,000
president.
and didn't.
Who's the best and
It
who's the
was
worst
fact.
president?
Everything coming in the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more because they're going to have to pay the difference in food and all the things that were imported. Number two,
because of
he's in
inflation.
a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he somehow helped the middle class. Middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are at the lowest deficit since 2010.
Thank you,
We're at the
President Biden.
highest. You lost
Thank you, President Biden.
160,000.
Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction
Bad on the West
who are
Coast.
struggling to get the treatment they need?
I bet you they say close
To
the
finish
border.
up,
Yeah.
we now have the largest
I was going to
deficit
think the
in the
same thing.
history of
We'll
our
see.
country under
We'll
the
see.
sky. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep
The
allowing
opioid
them
people are not going
to
get
do
help.
what they're doing
That's
to
right.
us as a country. They are
Yeah.
killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have
Screw
67
CNN.
seconds left. The question was, what are you
The
going to do to help
the
Americans
OD
They're
who are
irrelevant.
in addiction
in
right now who are struggling to get
in
the treatment they
on
need?
the
Are they gonna
West
ask them
Coast
again?
is
We're doing
so
very well
bad.
at addiction until the
Anywhere
COVID
from
came
5
along.
to
We
9
had
people
2.5,
die a
almost 3
day
years
just in
like
Los
nobody's
Angeles
ever had
alone.
before, any
A
country,
day
in
just
every
out in the
way.
open.
And then we had to get
Oh, they
tough.
asked them
And
again.
it
Okay,
was
that's
the
cool. You
drugs
got a
pouring
free, you got a
across the
free
border
talk time.
were it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot, and we were getting very low numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along. The numbers, have you seen the numbers now? It's not only the 18 million people that I believe is even low because the gotaways, they don't even talk about gotaways, but the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues, said, "Don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically." No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together.
You know,
That's
one
what
of
we
the
have to
problems
do.
with the
We need
trafficking, he
those
thinks
machines.
trafficking is coming
Thank you,
over the
President
border,
Biden.
but
President Trump, and
actually
again, the question
what's
is
happening
about
is that
Americans in
we've
the
got
throes of
cartels,
addiction right now,
especially
struggling to
on
get
the
treatment they need.
West Coast. I was just reading like
This
a
is
really
the thing.
long series of
He
articles
entered remain in Mexico.
where there's
Yeah,
in
the
Northern
Jackson release,
California
magnetic Jackson release in
and
Mexico,
in
not
lower
Jackson release.
Oregon, there's a lot
So
of
many
like
things that
in
we have
areas
done.
around
All the
Humboldt where we
pictures
have like a lot of
we got it all
forests,
for nothing.
and
It's just like when we have a hospital.
there
We
are
always pay
basically
$6
Mexican
billion
cartels
for
who
a
are coming
hospital.
in,
This is a
going
hospital.
to our
Now we
agricultural
have a
areas
hostage.
and
The Wall
telling the
Street
migrant
Journal
workers,
reported,
hey, we've got work
I
for
think
you
a good
working in
guy,
these hot
and
fields,
he
and
over
you can
there
come
was
and
putting
make
his
like
helping this guy probably lost
$100,000,
billions of
like
dollars.
many, like
For the
like
reporter. I will have
100,000
very
multiples of what they're
quickly,
making,
as soon as I take
in the
office,
agriculture
before I
fields.
take
They'll say,
office, I said,
sure. And then they
by
go up there
literally,
and then
as
they
soon as
find
I win
out
the
that
election, I
they're
will have
basically
that
going to be
reporter
treated
out.
like
We should have had
slaves
him
that
out
were
a
getting
long time ago,
paid.
but
The
Putin's
women
probably asking
were,
for billions and
made
billions
to
of
walk
dollars
around
because this guy
naked
pays me every
and
time. We
trafficked.
had
They
two
didn't know where
cases.
they
We paid $6
were.
billion for 5 people.
So these things
I
are
got
happening
58 people
within
out,
our
and I paid
country,
essentially nothing.
with our
Thank
systems
you,
here
President Trump.
now.
Dana?
They're actually
Let's turn to
not coming over
concerns
the
that
border.
voters have about
And
each of you.
now
President
um,
Biden, you would be
the
86
the
at the end of your second
Forest
term.
Service
How do you
was able
address
to come across
concerns
these
about your
places.
capability to
In
handle the
fact, it wasn't
toughest
even
job
just
in the
that. They
world
would come across
well into
places
your
where people
80s?
had abandoned it, and there were
First of
all these
all,
sort of
I
like starving
spent
dogs,
years
like tied up in cages and
because I was
stuff
the
because they
youngest
had the
person in
dogs
politics.
around to
I was
keep
the second
people,
youngest person
kind of alert
ever
them if
elected to the United
somebody
States
came
Senate,
into like the
non-oldest.
area.
This guy's
And
3 years
so
younger
when
than
they
me, a lot
left,
less
they just kind of
competent.
abandoned
I
everything,
think just
including the
look at the
animals.
record. Look at what
But
I've done. People have turned around
yeah,
here.
they
All the
would
situation
go
he's
to
in.
these places,
As I
and the
said,
Forest
he's
Service
bringing
would
new jobs,
basically take care of
800,000
it, and they could
manufacturing
take care of
jobs,
it immediately
more
because they had
investment in
jurisdiction.
America.
But now
There
they're
are
going onto private
billions of
property
dollars in
and just
private
kind of
investment
squatting and
in,
setting up
in
stuff
enterprises
or
that
working
we
out
won't
a
call.
deal with
By the
like
way,
the
we
private
brought an
property.
awful lot
But
of
now they
people.
can't do
Well,
anything about it because
the
they have
whole
to
idea
permit, they have to
is
do a
huge. It pushed us
verification, they
the
have to
market.
get warrants,
We
which is,
invented those
I mean,
chips.
obviously it's private
We
property,
lost
so
it
sure,
because he
that's
was sending
what you
people
need to do.
to
But it makes it much
cheap
more
jobs
difficult,
overseas and then
especially
bring home a
when,
product.
it's a
So
small
I
farmer,
went to
you have
South Korea.
160
I
acres,
convinced
and they don't know
Samsung
what's going on
that's
at any given time, like
$300 here
for
in the
every
United
single
States.
square inch of their
And
property,
guess what?
So
Those fabs they call it.
yeah,
That,
these are this is really bad.
release chips. Those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us. All of our allies
What?
and our those who he cuddles up to, from Kim Jong Un, he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. I go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they've never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden.
You can see he was 6'5" and only 225 pounds, or 225 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's it. Anyway.
I turned his
Just
mic
take a
off.
look at what
Wow.
he says he is. And
You see that?
Look at what he is. Look,
Oh, he did it, huh?
Yeah, they're not letting him.
I got my
Yeah.
handicap
Ah,
when I was
You only
vice
speak when we
president
let you.
down to a 6.
oh,
And but by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag.
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I had, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
President Trump, we're going to
21
turn
Let's not act like children.
to a specific concern that voters have about you.
They don't want Trump
Will
doing.
you
Yeah.
pledge
It's
tonight
hilarious.
that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Oh my.
And you will say right now that
No.
political violence in any form is unacceptable.
No.
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to. And I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent, because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation.
Again.
We're a failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want in NATO.
I
Just
don't
do
think
what you
Biden's
want.
in control. I
There's a thing
think
called Article 5.
the military
An
general, I
attack
think
on
this
one
guy's
is
too
attack on
old.
all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
Wow.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
I don't know.
Just to finish what he said, if I might, Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia, because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were
President Trump,
president.
the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that then I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else in a nice location someplace. And again, no indictments, no political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you appealed
Wow.
across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. You can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more.
Ooh,
I feel like-
hey, my prediction. He's doing better than people thought. Wow. Ooh.
Hi there.
Who would have
I feel
thought,
like he's
you would have thought he
justified. I
was
feel
going
like
to
he's
sing a
justified.
stinger like that and him not respond? Ooh.
Getting all his stuff taken. I mean,
Ooh.
I don't know. I feel like he justified.
Ouch. Ouch.
You just call him a whiner, but
I felt that all the way over here.
they indicted him for 30 felonies. Yo,
Yeah.
12 bills in the House. They said they both look like Max Headroom. And AI looking, everything is fake. Yeah, I could see that. So shout out to 12 bills. A lot of I feel like a lot of other issues they're not talking about.
Yeah.
What about, you think Assange
They're
will
not
come up?
answering the questions anyway. They're not even answering the questions that are posed to them. They're just going
think-
on and on about like.
You think
who's
Assange will
that
come up?
Sarah Weiner. What's that?
You think Assange will come up?
That would be interesting. I'd like to hear their take on it. And
Like, I wonder why they
'cause
released it.
everybody's out. You ask Trump, it's like, why didn't you pardon him? I think.
Yeah. Why
This
didn't
is
Trump
one of the
pardon him,
things
number
about
one?
third party, and Assange is very interesting in that when I heard that Assange, that this was going to happen, I thought to myself, they're really scared of the third parties because this is
Think so?
Assange is a huge third party issue. And, just like I was telling my friend that, when Nixon ran against McGovern had so much basically momentum because he was against the war. And
There's
it's
still
just,
Snowden.
and then, yeah, there is still Snowden, but, he wasn't kept into the public consciousness, or at least the way that Assange was. And I think that's because not everybody is a CIA, contractor, but lots of people are journalists. And, they felt that what happened to Assange could happen to them. And absolutely, they're right. So I'm happy that Assange has been. I think it's a wonderful thing that he's finally home with his family. But what he had to do for it was say that he did something that he didn't do. And now that's a precedent to pop anybody else. And
Actually, RFK
Well,
has his own broadcast. We could jump into that one and see if he's saying stuff if you want. I think he's debating them. I think also maybe Joe Stein's doing a separate one.
yeah, he is. And Cornel West is going to have something on the Grio.
Oh, that's disgusting. Sorry.
So, but yeah, they're all commenting on that. And the interesting thing is they'll probably answer the questions because these candidates aren't answering all the questions.
Yeah, so probably I'll probably send this list of questions to the candidates afterwards, like what they talked about tonight,
Mhm.
because they might want to respond to some of this stuff, and we're gonna figure out what questions we have. And if anybody's watching this tonight and they have their own questions for the candidates, feel free to email dgl7@dgl7.com, and we'll try to fit in. We're also having a town hall after the debate, so if the crowd, if people watching want to ask questions for the president candidates, then you can. It's happening, I think Sunday. Oh, they started again? Okay. Let's see what's going on.
We're going to begin with you, President. Biden, you have 2 minutes.
We've made significant progress from the debacle that was left by President Trump in his last term. We find ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes and will not. And if I'm reelected, that'll be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit. Number one, he's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States.
Joe Biden has huge.
I did. When, for example, he wants
He
to
lowered
get
it for
rid
people
of,
with kids.
get rid of
And he
the
increased it for
ability of
people who do
Medicare
not have kids.
for the ability for us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along. It's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care. We're going to significantly increase the credits people have for child care. I'm going to make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health problems for people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never
just
happened.
repeating some of
Iran
the
was
last stuff
broke.
you said before.
Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world.
Whoa, wait a minute.
What we did was incredible. We rebuilt
Didn't he pull,
the
like, armed
military.
forces
We
against
got the
protesters
largest tax
before?
cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's
Sounds
putting
like
a lot
you're
of
thinking
those
that, man.
regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like, even from a medical standpoint.
I wasn't
right to
here
try,
while
where
Trump
we
was
can try
president, so I don't really
space
know.
age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get, when you're terminally ill, now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible. Choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President Trump, President Biden. Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
Okay. Reported numbers, which are hard to trust, but we'll see what's up.
Yeah, interesting.
Who do you think got it?
You know, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I thought that Biden was doing like
We'll do that
whatever
bet.
the drugs kicked in. I don't even I don't know. But after as it went on, he got better and better.
President and former
at it.
presidents making their way off the
For
CNN debate
Biden.
stage. Looks like
And
Joe Biden, the first lady, has come out. Former President Trump walking off the stage.
Just
The first
he
debate
just
of the
kept
2024
parodying
campaign and the
his
earliest
talking
presidential
points, and
debate ever,
obviously
now
the main
in the
talking
books and in
point
front of the
was
voters. Tonight, along with Aaron
immigration
Burnett, the
and
first
border.
word on what those voters might make of
So-
it from our political professionals, from our CNN Flash poll and swing state focus group. We'll be talking to surrogates, including Vice President Harris, getting fact checks from our Daniel Dale and new reporting from inside both campaigns. With me here, CNN political commentator Scott Jennings, Kate Bedingfield, David Urban, Van Jones, Alyssa Farr Griffin, and Newsnight anchor Abby Phillip, and David Axelrod, and CNN chief national correspondent John King. John, let me start with you. Your thoughts?
Anderson, this was a game-changing debate in the sense that right now, as we speak, there is a deep, a wide, and a very aggressive panic in the Democratic Party. It started minutes into the debate, and it continues right now. It involves party strategists, it involves elected officials, it involves fundraisers. And they're having conversations about the president's performance, which they think was dismal, which they think will hurt other people down the party in the ticket. And they're having conversations about what they should do about it. Some of those conversations include, should we go to the White House and ask the president to step aside? Other of the conversations are about, should prominent Democrats go public with that call? Because they feel this debate was so terrible. They do say in moments in the debate later, the president got better and got his footing, but then at the end, even his closing statement was a little halting. The contrast between the two candidates. Let me be clear. None of them, and a lot of Republicans, don't think Donald Trump had a great night. Donald Trump broke the fact check machine more than I can count tonight. That will be on the record as we go forward. He refused to answer some very specific and direct questions about his conduct, about January 6th and what all. So that will be dealt with out there. And sometimes there's a parallel universe between the political elites and the American people. It'd be nice to see what the voters say. But I can tell you, it started minutes in. It started with the first couple of answers, and it has continued throughout the night from a, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, to what do we do about this? And it involves very senior people in the Democratic Party, including elected officials, saying we have a problem.
And just to co-sign what John is saying, I mean, the panic that I am hearing from Democrats is not like anything that I have heard in this campaign so far. And a lot of it has to do with, first of all, there was a deep frustration about Trump's lies. I mean, he lied a lot tonight. But the problem for Biden was that Trump was able to take sometimes incredible falsehoods and turn them into some kind of argument, whereas Biden's answers were, in a lot of cases, not coherent, deeply problematic, that he was not able to take pretty straightforward answers and answer them to the American public. And then also at some points, bringing things up that teed up Trump attacks. So there's a real concern here tonight that there's been some real damage done that cannot be undone. Biden solidified the perception among voters, but especially among his base. They were hoping that tonight would be a game changer. They are now seeing a president who is in the White House, who they do not necessarily believe can do this for another 4 years.
David Axelrod?
Look, I can't argue with either of them about how Democratic leaders
Are they like the right-hand
reacting
panel
to
or
this
something?
poll. We said at the beginning that each person had a fundamental goal. And for Biden, that goal was to appear energetic, engaged, and look like someone who is capable of serving for another 4 years for president. That was job number one. I actually think he scored a bunch of points. I think if you just judge this on sort of policy stuff, he did score a bunch of points on issues like abortion, for example, on some of the economic issues. But there is a feeling, I think there was a sense of shock, actually, at how he came out at the beginning of this debate, how his voice sounded about, he seemed a little disoriented. He did get stronger as the debate went on, but by that time, I think the panic had set in. And I think you're going to hear discussions that I don't know will lead to anything, but there are going to be discussion about whether he should continue. And I think part of it is Donald Trump did not meet his mission either. He could not resist the temptation to be nasty, to prevaricate about a
I
whole
want
bunch of
that.
things,
That's more entertaining.
about his own record, about Biden's
That was
record,
way more fun.
and to seem petty and
I didn't
small
come
at
here to
times.
watch
So
him be.
what
Oh,
you saw was a
Biden,
candidate
oh."
who's deeply
I
vulnerable
want this.
and a president who may not be able to take advantage of it.
Well,
Listen,
these are
if
my
anybody in
concerns.
America thinks that that was even close
I want to know what's
to
going
being
on.
an
We're
okay
being
debate
teed
by
up
Joe
for
Biden,
another war.
I'm
And
living in a
not only are
parallel
we being
universe.
teed up for another
That
war,
was an
we're actually
unmitigated
being teed
disaster
up
for
for a
President Biden
draft.
from the second he walked out
And
to the closing statement.
people who
Biggest
have
issue for
kids
Democrats is
in high
abortion,
school,
and he couldn't give an answer.
or, you know,
He gave an
I have
answer,
a son who's a
he
teenager.
couldn't even give a
Uh,
coherent answer on the
I'm
biggest
very
issue for
concerned
Democrats today.
that
I've
Americans are
heard from
going to have to fight
leading
yet
Democrats
another
across the United
war
States,
in the Middle
elected
East,
governors,
a war
congressmen, who are
in
texting me and saying, I'm worried I'm going to lose if Joe
Eastern
Biden's the
Europe,
top of the ticket.
or maybe even a
Bob
war in
Casey, I
Asia,
promise you tonight, in the
or
state of
maybe all
Pennsylvania,
three.
is throwing up
And
in his mouth because he
I
knows
I
if he's going
don't
to stand
want
next to
that.
Joe
I
Biden,
don't
he's
want
going
that.
down in
To
Pennsylvania.
me, for me,
If he's
my absolutely overarching concern is to keep us out of war. And when I say to keep us out of war, what I really mean is to keep somebody from killing my son, from killing my kid. And I personally was not given any kind of, dangling carrot or bone or anything about that scenario not happening. I didn't feel safe under Trump, and I don't feel safe under Biden, and I don't feel safe as to what he's saying, because Biden, if you were listening, I know people were like kind of zoning him out because they think that he's just mumbling, but he's saying we have to do everything to keep Putin, from continuing and taking over parts of Europe. That's just another dog whistle for war. And I don't care how it looked to the rest of the world for us getting out of Afghanistan. Why? Because the world knows how we got out of Saigon, and the world knows how we got out of, they know how we got out of Vietnam, and they know how we got out of Korea. And guess what? We got out of Afghanistan the same way. And to think that, the Russians, think that we're weak. Guess what? The Russians were tied up. That's for anybody who doesn't know their history. The Russians were tied up in Afghanistan as well. They say Afghanistan is the place where empires go to die. It was shortly after, them finally pulling out of Afghanistan, that the Soviet Union collapsed. And, us getting out of any war is a good thing. And us staying out of a war is a good thing. And I don't want my son or anybody else's kid to be drafted to go to some crazy war that's started by a bunch of old men.
I'm gonna tell you something that may sound a little concerning, right? Yeah. The thing is that I'm taking, when Trump gets sentenced on July 11th,
Mm-hmm.
to probably prison or some type of confinement, home confinement, or some type of limitation, right? I'm actually taking some of the longest wrongfully incarcerated men in national and state history, a representative for Gavin Centrone, right? Probably talking about that issue of someone from Reese Houses, the scare that caused, the death which ended up causing at that home, which caused the resignation of Greg Russ, head of NYCHA. And some more people, and we're going to actually take the case and actually submit it to not just UN, but other world courts. Like the US is about to do their bargaining for the petrodollar, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to email those countries and tell them about what's happening to us. And the fact of the matter is that when Biden said that the world trusts us, we both laughed. But the fact of the matter is that we're also going to ask for investigation into why Black people are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of whites and this kind of thing. And I think that internationally, right, this could cause, right, you said you're worried about a war starting, but if we don't take back control of this country, right, and these people keep operating this garbage, then we're going to have a war. That's what I think.
Yeah, and I'm very concerned about that.
We gotta take control over here. We can't let these people mess it all up.
All we've been set up to do, and neither one kind of corrected anything. It was just set up for lies, lies, and more lies. The whole premise of what's happening in Israel and what's happening, the reason why Hamas, along with other groups of people, the reason why they were thinking of attacking is not in spite of the Abraham Accords, but because of them. They were going to lose all of their allies, and they knew that they had to do something to kind of shake things up so they would be able to, A, do some kind of prisoner swap, and B, try to keep basically Saudi Arabia, a bunch of other countries from being kind of involved in their plight. And Putin said repeatedly, I don't want NATO at our borders. I don't want NATO at our borders. And in fact, that is what was agreed upon between Gorbachev and Reagan and President Reagan. And again, just like, over and over again, America breaks their treaties. They don't keep their word. They break their promises. And this is something, just like Gaza has tons and tons of oil. I mean, at one point I was reading that they called that area the Leviathan because it has so much gas reserves. I mean, so just tons and tons of gas reserves. And apparently the same thing is true for that particular area of the Ukraine. They have an enormous amount of mineral reserves there. Not to mention, it has, it also has some very problematic issues. Chernobyl is in the Ukraine. The town of Pripyat, which had to be abandoned, which is still abandoned, no one can live there. There's and unfortunately, from my reading, Chernobyl isn't even the only place that has had a kind of nuclear disaster. There's a few sites that are like horrible. So imagine any of these places getting bombed and then creating a situation like you saw, back, basically something that was basically the catalyst for the breakup, along with their, involvement in foreign wars like in Afghanistan was a catalyst for the breakup of the Soviet Union. So where when you look at the history of empires, large nations, it's when they get into too many wars and they have their fingers in too many pies, it's when they can't handle everything and they start breaking apart. This has happened, before Rome, after Rome. The last great empire was the British Empire, and now they're just basically a fraction. It used to be the sun didn't set on the British Empire, and now they're a fraction of what they were. But understand that all the things that we're dealing with in the Middle East are things that the British set up. So
I heard that one
we're
reason
kind of dealing with their problems. We're kind of dealing with the stuff that we've inherited, and unfortunately, continue to carry the torch on. And it's not good. It's not good, man. We're looking at war. We're looking at war. All military-aged men, from 18 to 26, will be mandatorily put on a list, even against their will. And this has already been signed into law. It was part of the military funding that was passed, bipartisan by both houses. So this is supposed to happen in 2025. They're teeing up for a war that's probably going to kick off anytime between probably now and 2029.
Well, they said that one theory I've heard is that the reason why they're letting migrants is so they could be the infantry for a war.
And I agree with that.
Possible. I don't know if they will actually, how hard they'll fight for a country, but I mean, they'll fight to survive, right? They'll be wearing a flag.
They might fight for citizenship.
Interesting. Could possible. Yeah. Is it worth it? They'll
You
see.
fight, yeah. You fight in our armed forces, and you know, then you get citizenship. Yeah, they did it before.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So, anything particularly from the West Coast or any particular perspective you want to bring on that in terms of the race?
Well, you know, I would say that one of the biggest issues out here are the deaths of overdose, and homelessness is huge. Just housing is an enormous issue here, and
What about migrants? Do y'all got migrants as well? You know, there's a lot of
yeah,
migrants.
that's the thing, is that we don't. I mean, supposedly California is taking in the largest amount, and we just don't see them. We're getting buses of people too. And it's like we're we're just we're just taking them in and integrating them, you
They're
know,
just
so
blending into
well that
LA.
nobody really even sees it. They really don't even know, like they don't.
There's large Mexican communities and other communities also.
Yeah, there's already, you know, I mean, it isn't just Mexican, it's mostly, I would say it's mostly not Mexican, probably Central American people, you
migrants.
know, Asians, yeah, Middle Easterners, of which we have huge communities of all of those people. So it's, you know, how would you know, by just by looking at people, you kind of wouldn't, you know, that we have so many people from other places in California that everybody just kind of blends in.
Yeah, I felt like there's so many issues that there's so many more issues to talk about, right? Like climate change. I think they talk about just for a little bit, but you know, the water running out in California, things like that. So
well, we don't have that problem anymore. We have a lot of, in fact, we have the opposite problem. We have some problems with dams now, and being
really?
Our aquifers. Yeah, we're almost completely out of a drought. We got so much rain.
I thought they said that there was like a huge like possibility of everything running dry.
It was, and it was like 1,000,000 to 1 chance of it correcting itself, and it did within a few seasons, where all of our aquifers are back. Yeah.
Do you think maybe it was right? You know, like I know it sounds crazy. You think the chemtrails, maybe they were dropping some ice pellets and made the water come down? Maybe.
I don't know. Well,
1,000,000 to 1
yeah,
chance.
I do know that this past year was an El Nino year, and so we got a lot of
hurricane
rain.
type waters.
Yeah, we got a lot of rain. We got a lot of rain. They got a lot of rain in Northern California, and so they get so much rain that they have to release some of it for the dams and stuff. And so all of our aquifers, all of that stuff, we got a lot, and we were able to. We're also putting in the infrastructure to recapture a lot of that rainfall and have it, instead of having it just go out into the ocean. So we've been able to replenish our aquifers, and it's a good thing.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm glad
So,
to hear that.
so California is doing better. I mean, the bad thing about California is it's just we don't have enough housing. We actually have a housing shortage. We're building like crazy, but we don't have enough housing. And there are some things that are being passed. These are some good things. Normally, to build in California, it'll cost you anywhere between, if you're building a 500 square foot house, if you're building something that's really large, it'll cost you anywhere from $20,000 to $150,000 that you have to pay out in permits and fees just to put a spade in the ground. So something is passing through our assembly now that will allow developers to start building without having to pay these enormous developers fees, and the developers fees will be due after they get the certificate of occupancy, which will be wonderful. So people will be able to start projects without having an enormous amount of money up front, and that'll be amazing. That will be really great. That's going to cause a lot of building out here.
I'm glad I have you on because I know you have like experience with the mortgage industry, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the thing is that, as you know, right, when someone buys a property, they really want that property to maintain its value. So they start to engage, or they try to make it gain value.
Right.
So they start to engage in all kinds of like financial trickery or BS, or, and they really cause the real estate to artificially, real estate education, these things are really becoming these very high cost value items when really these things could be free, right? Yeah. The real
Right.
estate really, I don't know if you traveled across the country, how was that time outside of LA, but I've gone to upstate New York. There's a lot of open space. There's a
Oh,
lot.
there's a lot of
So
open space.
there's
I
no
mean, I
reason for us
went,
to be paying $1,000 a month to
I
live on a
drove
small
to
plot of land.
Texas to
Makes sense.
see the eclipse, to
Yeah.
be in the path of totality.
Yeah.
And,
So much
you know, we
space,
drove
right?
through Arizona, we drove through New Mexico, we drove through Texas. There's a lot of space out there, people. There's tons of places where
But
people
why
can
is
live. This is
why
a
is the
big,
rent
big
so
country.
high? Like it's
Yeah,
property
exactly.
management
Why
things
is it, you
and
know,
banking and
the rents are too
mortgaging.
damn high. Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Exactly. And
value
that's
is
what
just
you see.
yeah.
And so uh I I can tell you that, you know, they didn't have the shutdowns like we did in California. So I can tell you that I didn't see a lot of boarded up places like I still do in California. I didn't see a lot of just for rent signs or for lease signs. It just seemed like everything was bustling, everything was gangbusters, and I rarely saw an empty storefront. I rarely saw an empty storefront. I also rarely saw, maybe I wasn't looking in the right places, but I certainly was driving all around and, you know, I don't have a lot of money, so we weren't staying in like the swankiest hotels and stuff. So it wasn't like we were always in the best parts of town, but I saw very few homeless people. I mean, it was shocking. It's like once I left California, I saw maybe I really only saw one, and that was in El Paso.
You
And I
know,
was surprised when I saw that. And maybe I wasn't looking in the right places, but I can tell you that it's everywhere in California, and it's very bad in Los Angeles, and it's just so different when you drive to other places. It's just so different.
but
And our biggest problems really are being able to afford amenities. I mean, gas is so expensive here. It's like, you know, almost in some areas like $6 a gallon. But in Texas, it was like 3.29, and I was listening to the radio and they were complaining at how the gas was going up. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so cheap out here. It's so cheap. And they were complaining about how expensive gas was.
yeah,
So
a lot of this stuff feels artificial and weird. Like, you know, supposedly the price of like, you know, groceries went up. They
yeah,
said 100, 120, which it went more
it's
than
really
that. But
expensive.
the thing is that, right, the plants came out of the ground. The sunlight didn't get more expensive. The water is just coming
Right.
from the
You're
sky.
right.
What
Cows
is
didn't
this?
stop
Who
giving milk.
decided? Right? Yeah,
You
like it's
know,
real
like
weird.
the birds don't stop laying eggs. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Exactly.
weird stuff going on. Make no sense. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
So
yeah.
so that yeah, you're right. The trees don't stop bearing fruit.
You know,
And
also last election cycle, there was this weird COVID stuff going on, and now the Dems are super nervous. Do you think there'll be a manufactured crisis before the actual election?
you know, one of the things that made Trump popular, remember, because Trump was the one giving away the goodies, right? He was the one who was
The
saying everybody
$2,000?
should get like, yeah,
Yeah.
that, you know, some people got because they were able to get, even if they were a gig worker or a 1099 worker, they were able to get unemployment benefits. So not only did they get, you know, a windfall of money, like all of a sudden everybody got just a lump of cash, but then they got payments for a certain amount of time. And it was just like, you know, yippee, like I get to stay home. I get to stay home, blah, blah, blah. It's when the spigot got
Well,
cut
I mean,
off that
it was only
everybody.
people with unemployment, people that didn't have a job before didn't get any
Right.
money.
True. Yeah. Or people who didn't do their taxes. True. They didn't get some sort of lump. But if you did and you were working, yeah, a fair amount of people got that. So I think that this was really hard on immigrants because a lot of people, you know, they didn't get a tax return, you know, they don't do a tax return, so they didn't get that money. They weren't signed up for it. It was really hard on a lot of people.
Remember when they said COVID, we'd have to get a new shot every year?
Yeah, it's crazy.
That didn't fly.
I mean,
People was like, hell no. People
that's
was like,
really
no.
crazy.
We got sick
That's
of it.
really crazy. I mean, Yeah, I was just reading out here in the Lakers. You know, LeBron James is on the Lakers, and he had a son, Bronny. He has a son, Bronny James, and Bronny was playing for USC, University of Southern California. And I don't know if people remember this, but he had a cardiac arrest. An 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid had a cardiac arrest and was out 8 games. It's like there's no real history of like heart disease in LeBron James's family, you know? So, and we're talking a kid who's like in like the fittest of health. He had it because I know that USC was making kids get the shot, you know? So, and, you know, and they were saying, oh, it's a congenital disease. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. So,
Can't be their fault.
I think that, I think they didn't want to go there, but you know, maybe I would have asked, would you make any future vaccines mandatory? That would be a great question for Biden and Trump. Would you make these vaccines mandatory? You're saying the shutdowns, the mandates. Would you make the vaccines mandatory for anybody, for the military, for federal workers? Would you make it yes or no?
I
Biden,
think
Trump.
the Republicans control Congress now, right?
Yeah, slightly. We have a slight.
What about Senate? No.
Not the Senate.
No, okay, but maybe soon.
But it's only
year.
it's only one. It's only by one,
I think
and
this year could
it's
flip.
only by a handful in the Congress.
I think this year could really flip. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really sad. I know back in your parts, I have to say I'm kind of sad that Jamal Bowman lost. I feel that Jamal Bowman, you know, thought about families because he was a principal. He thought about kids, and I think that he was a very important anti-war voice. I think that he would never vote for a draft because he knows he knows the kids who would be going and dying. And I guess the thing that I guess I'm most worried about is that this has emboldened IPAC, and now they think they can do this everywhere. They just have to throw enough money at it, and that makes me really, 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 really concerned. There's a lot of things that I think are important, but there's nothing more important than avoiding a war. There's just nothing more important than avoiding a war.
Well, actually, I see a huge opportunity here because now that Jamal Bowman's about to get lame ducked, I'm about to hit him up and be like, yo, can you like throw all these bills up and stuff? Because,
maybe he will. Maybe he will. It's like,
yeah,
hey, what does he have to lose? He has nothing to lose.
Yeah,
he has nothing to lose.
Also, the thing is that if he's not elected, right? Like a lot of times those people run for city council or some other thing like that, right? He could enter that sphere, or which he probably will. Let's be honest, right? He's probably a pretty well known guy, or he could just apply his knowledge to actual activism, street activism, and he could join us out here. So that would be very interesting, right? If he becomes he could have his own YouTube show, right? He could start doing things. I don't know. We'll see. Nina Turner's kind of faded. A lot of these other cats have faded.
Didn't Nina Turner win a position in the Ohio legislature? I thought she did.
Yeah, but like as in terms of like, she's not. You don't see her out there like doing shows and
right,
interviews and appearances. Yeah. She's kind of pulled back from that.
Yeah.
So, but maybe it would be nice to have that. But I think even there aren't a lot of politicians that are actually doing like content where you can like really follow them. So, but maybe Jamal Bowman could, right? Yeah, he could be free.
Podcast. Bernie,
a lot of legislators end up becoming lobbyists. I wonder if he'll become a lobbyist. We'll see. Yeah, or a consultant.
We'll see.
So I'll be reaching out. I'm going to actually, since he's actually not elected anymore, things might quiet down for him, and maybe he'll do an interview on the show.
I hope that. I mean, that would be great.
That'd be cool.
But I hope that he can, that he stays, that he tries again, and that he stays strong with the anti-war movement. because
You know, I worked on his
a
first
lot of
campaign.
a lot of the kids, like I heard he was really able to mobilize like a lot of like students and stuff to help him
Yeah,
out.
that's what made him won the first time. He was making so
Yeah.
many calls a day. Now
Yeah.
the second time, I believe that Sunrise was having his back again. But the thing about Sunrise is, here's something weird.
I don't think they're as energized. You know what? I have to tell you, this is what I think what happened.
Sunrise,
I think that they thought that he was going to win and that they didn't really have to go all out. I think that they're really shocked that he lost because I thought that he was going to.
Have you ever heard of a rapper
They
called
thought he was
Tim?
going to eke by. They thought that he was going to eke by.
Have you? Well, I tell you the truth, I wasn't really helping him that much, so I did kind of, because the first time I saw him win by so much. But have you ever heard of him called Mice in General? A rapper called Mice in General?
No.
No, he's pretty good. He was actually out there endorsing Jamal Bowman, so you know, I'd say he's a better known rapper. You know, Mice in General. So it's all good. And also, didn't he have Bernie and AOC come out to help him?
Yeah, but I heard it was kind of a bust. Like people weren't showing up and stuff. You know, that's what we heard on the West Coast, and it's kind of like, eek. Because I heard that happened to Cornel West as well. Cornel West had a rally in Harlem and nobody showed. I heard it was like a really weak turnout. And
Good.
that's what we heard on the West Coast, because I can tell you, he's holding stuff now. Now, Melina Abdullah, you have to understand, like she's well known in LA.
Carrying him,
So, so she, she teaches at Cal State LA, and she's the chair of the Pan African students. She's the head and the co-founder of the Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. And, she was instrumental in getting rid of Jackie Lacey. And so she's had a lot of wins, and she's, pretty well respected out here. And she also has she also has a show on KPFK, the Pacifica Network. And she had, Cornel West picked her as his running mate. And so they had something out here, and I was thinking of going. It was like a little fundraiser-y type of thing. And
I want to shout it right now.
It was sold out. I couldn't even get near it. So
Carmen Canonis is watching, one of my favorite activists.
Hey, Carmen.
I worked on her campaign pretty hard, but I was devastated by the results. And I'm telling you right now that the thing is that, right, there was some in her race, there was like a bunch of other competitors. And one of the progressives, right, that was working in the race gave me this look, right? They were all white. There was a couple of Asians that I think was working with them, one black guy, but mostly white. And then he gave me a look and he's like, I feel bad that you guys are running because you're competing with the progressive candidate. I said, this could be the first time associate president in New York State history to ever win elected office. Poor people, minority people have a chance to win. And you're in the way. What are you talking about? You're the one in the way. What are you talking about? Yeah. It was really sad. So shout out to Carmen Canonis, one of my favorite activists out here. And they pioneered for results. We got beat up pretty bad. I couldn't even, I just walked back. Yeah, it was heartbreaking. But shout out to Carmen Canonis.
Well, the important thing is getting your name out there, getting a lot of name recognition. Sometimes that takes, more than one try.
It was so sick because the early voting was happening in her development at Douglas Houses, where she's the tennis association president. The early voting, the site where it was in her, it was ridiculous. That's a huge plus, you know what I mean? So I don't think we'll have to see like what the results are of that. But if there was a chance to mobilize, she played as, I'm not going to reveal her whole strategy. She gambled on public housing. Public housing really should have done better for her, Some other tennis players showed up. Manny Martinez, shout out to him. I don't want to take all this time up. This is the East Coast angle of it, though. But once again, right, they're really leaving minorities, and they didn't really speak so much about taking care of minorities either. They talked a little bit about the black people trusting Biden or something.
Right, black people trusting Biden.
I don't think either of them gave a great answer.
Nope. And I think that's the reason why they're trying to usurp the third party issues. Assange,
Yeah, it's
Um,
weird, right? The sun.
I wouldn't be surprised if Biden started to now. This is a very interesting thing because I can see Biden trying to get a ceasefire through, to kind of like rug pull like any third party momentum, because that's mostly what they're running against is like basically all of this stuff
I
that's happening.
I think
He's
Trump
like,
said he would help
Biden is
Israel.
basically doubling down on Ukraine, and Trump
He tried
isn't.
to pull tough guy. He's like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, Putin, if you're going to Kiev, it's on. Yeah, I was like,
yeah,
wow, really?
yeah. And then what is Trump saying? Trump's not saying this war should have never happened. We should have never pushed to their borders. And I've heard him say this before, but what did he say for the debate? Oh, it would have never happened because it's because they don't respect you. That's why it happened. Instead of saying that we instigated this, we caused that coup to happen, and there's a bunch of collusion that some nefarious things that even involve your son, and then and now that's the reason why they feel forced to go in, and we need to resolve this as soon as possible so it doesn't start escalating and going into a lot of other places.
I don't
And
think Biden won any Trump supporters. I think
no,
if Trump won any Biden supporters,
I don't think
I think
so.
they have
I don't
serious
think
Trump
Trump won any Biden
syndrome.
supporters.
Yeah, I don't think like either side really like pulled off each other's voters and stuff.
No.
So it
I
was
think
violent.
so who was the winner? So let's why don't we end with this? Who was the winner?
It was I think Trump won a little bit, but
Um
I did better than
I
expected.
think the ultimate winner
Yeah.
was Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Why is that?
Because neither one of them really gained ground, and I think that left a big lane open. There's a lot there that they didn't even step into,
Have you
and
heard
that's what the third party lane. That's what the third party lane. That's you give them space and it gets filled. But honestly, between the two, I would say that Biden won, and slightly. And the reason why I would say that,
really? And what makes
yes,
you say that?
they both lost. That's what Carmen said. Kind of, yeah. And that's the reason why I think that quote unquote Biden won. And it's because people were expecting Biden to just fall apart. They were expecting him just to be in a puddle. They expected him just to like literally collapse and just stand there stunned like a deer in the headlights. And that didn't happen. And so because he was able to keep his nose right above the waterline, I think that he did a lot better than they thought. Now, if they have another debate and Trump decides, okay, I'm really going to like slice and dice him, go after him, or, do whatever things, or just go, basically like he was doing to Hillary Clinton, where he would like walk over to her, walk behind her, and just do, all these kind of crazy things. He might do it. I'm sure there's some people who are saying, let Biden hang himself. But, obviously they didn't. He did freeze. But come on, didn't you expect him to do that more? Didn't you expect him to completely like stutter and collapse? I mean, he did do that.
Yeah.
But
And then he got lost. He felt what he's saying. And yeah, it did
he did that. He did that. But as the debate went on, he got stronger and stronger.
I
and
expected
stronger
him to
and
do that
stronger.
for the whole entire debate. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
he
exactly.
did it.
Everybody
Yeah,
did.
like he survived.
Everybody did. They
No, I feel
thought
like it's all
he was going to get KO'd in the first 5 minutes and then just lie there like a corpse on the ground, while Trump danced around him, like a
You got to
prize
start
fighter.
taking local
And that's
control.
not what happened. At the
Yeah.
end, it kind of like was even. And that evenness, I think, slightly benefited Biden. But I still think that people, there are still people who are worried. But the thing is that, then it comes to Trump, and Trump can like be really clear and really talk about the direction where things should go. They talked about nothing. Exactly, Carmen. They talked about nothing. So he gave no direction. So so let's say it's the election and Trump wins. Do you have a single idea, that just the tiniest inclination what the F the dude's gonna do? I have absolutely no idea what this dude's gonna do. The only thing I know for sure is he's going to close the border and hunt down every immigrant in the country. That's it. That's the only thing. Why? Because that's the one thing that he's harping on. Okay, great. So, and that's supposed to give us all jobs. That's supposed to all of a sudden. Two men lie to me for 2 hours. Yeah, exactly. So do you know what they're going to do? You don't. Yeah, exactly. And so we don't. And so, okay, so he does that. Then what?
We got to take local control. I'm going to start focusing more on going after, the people in my county. I'm going to run for county committee in a couple of years. I know Tom was a former district leader. I do look forward to learning from her and getting into the game more and exerting more local control. So I do have to learn the game. I've never really been in that, but
and that's what's needed. People just to saying, okay, we got to handle it. We got to handle it on a local level because the federal level may just fall apart. Now, remember back. I mean, I know it's hard to remember like before COVID-ish period, right? But I was being told by people in DC that Trump wasn't basically hiring anybody. Like he wasn't filling positions. People were saying that you could. Yeah, we need to find a new candidate quick.
I mean, for Biden?
Yeah.
Democrats are freaking out. Yeah.
You said that you were going into federal buildings and like no one was there and you could like walk around and there was just like nothing. Like there were so many vacancies and he on purpose wasn't filling them. And so also, I made some notes when we talked just about this at the very beginning. The reason why he was saying that we had a lot more money and a lot more money was coming in, that's because he was threatening businesses that kept their money overseas. Like for instance, if you stay in Ireland, it's tax-free for a certain number of years or whatever. So he had them repatriate the money because he was taxing all of the companies that had one American citizen on their board. You have one
that was a good
on
thing
your board. Yeah, that was a good thing. But does that sound like a Republican thing? No, that sounds more like a Democrat thing. It's like, no, you're not just going to run away and not be taxed and then make your money in America and then run away and not be taxed. No, you have one single American on your board and you're going to get taxed. And then what he do when he said, I lower the taxes, that's the reason why. Well, he's not really being descriptive. Yeah, he got gangster. That's funny. So what he did was, in order to repatriate the money, they're going to have to pay anywhere between 15 and 25%. I think he lowered it to something like 5 to 7%. And that's why that money came back in. Remember how he was going after Apple like really hard? All of a sudden he dropped going after Apple. That's because Apple repatriated a ton of money and then put it into treasuries. So the countries that Trump was bullying, like China, who's one of our biggest creditors. Russia also was one of our biggest creditors. And they stopped buying our treasuries. And so what does he want? Trump wants a Japan-like system where the corporations are buying our treasuries, just like they do in Japan. So most of Japan's debt, even though they have they have almost double. I think they may have even just about double what we owe. But we owe it to foreigners. They owe it to themselves or to the corporations. And so there's this kind of like collusion with the corporations, but they keep themselves going. With us,
I feel like international.
We owe other countries. And so what does that do? So what does that mean? What do we have to do? We have to get antagonistic with other countries. Why? Because we got to pay that money back and we have to have a reason not to do that because we know that they're not going to get the money back. So we've got so many companies in so if we just say to the Chinese, okay, we're not going to pay your money back, all this money that you've lent to us, what are they going to do? They're just going to nationalize their businesses. We have tons of businesses over there, and that's how they're going to get their money back. So, what can they do? I mean, that's why Trump is saying, he's by his actions, he's giving away things. He's basically letting people know, like, hey, something's going down. You better get your ass back to America. So
yeah,
I'm concerned because it's really, Trump scored that on America First. Yeah. So the thing is that to be honest, and he won't admit it, Biden is continuing a lot of stuff that Trump did. And, just like Trump said, he continued the tariffs. And what did we get in return? We got tariffs in return. And what that's going to mean is things get expensive. So Biden was actually telling the truth a little bit. A lot of those tariffs have caused the price of all of our imported goods, which tons of our goods come from other countries. It's caused the price of imported goods to rise. And that's our inflation. And that's what tariffs tend to do, is create inflation. And every time it's been tried, it happens. So they're saying, oh, we send our stuff to them, but they don't send our stuff. So we need to, because they have tariffs on us, but we don't have tariffs on them. We're going to impose tariffs. And that's how we got all this money in. No, that's not how we got all this money in. That's how we got the inflation. And I'll tell you, if Trump wants to impose more tariffs, get ready for higher prices. Get ready. Because anything that's not made domestically is going to be through the roof.
If they can smuggle drugs into this country, they can smuggle anything into this country. You know what I mean? So tariffs, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really worry about that. But do you know about the plan on July 11th to go in front of the courthouse when Trump is sentenced, to bring the wrongfully incarcerated victims and then to take them to world courts?
Yeah, I think that shit's gonna go down. I think that things might get intense.
The thing is that, right? A lot of times we've been going
tons
to
of lies were told tonight. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
Tons of lies.
The thing is that there's a lot of press that has been ignoring our issues for 2-3 years, and I found out that the press has a relationship with the not-for-profits. The not-for-profits will literally give the press thousands of dollars of awards and invite them to dinners and all kinds of other things, and then they cover their stuff which relate to campaigns. So now the thing is that because they're not covering our issues, we're gonna weaponize that against them, and then document all that, and then send it to the international courts and committees for them to see all that. So if the press doesn't report on the July 11th thing, I'm just going to weaponize it against them. So I'm tired of being a victim. So tonight there was a lot of narratives and perspectives that were brought that had nothing to do with you or me. It was completely a CNN perspective, their little game, Jan 6, that didn't affect me.
Yeah,
right. I didn't give a shit.
We don't care about it.
Their priorities, right? Yeah, their bullshit.
Yeah.
We gotta just
care people who don't have to put food on the table, who don't have to worry about that, who don't have families.
$100 to $120. Like, where are they buying these groceries at?
Yeah, exactly. $120. Ha! They wish it was only $120.
One way or more.
We're talking like the prices have doubled.
Almost doubled. Yeah. What do you mean $120? You mean like $200?
Yeah, exactly.
150, 175, 120.
Like, try to feed your kids. You can give them a lunch at school. I mean, if they don't, they're even giving kids less food at schools now, because they used to give kids a lot more food at schools, and now they're giving them less. And in some places, I mean, they used to take the kids. I mean, out here, they would, on Fridays, they'll pack lunches for the kids, so the kids have a couple of meals, so they'll have something to go home, because some of these kids, they only eat what they eat at school, and they only eat one meal a day at home. So, yeah.
Well, so Hyperion Academics hopefully is done soon. I know you got like a lot of other work
Yes.
to do, but I'm trying to establish once again, New York City is the largest market in the nation with 8.5 million. LA is the second largest market in the nation. We've been partners since kind of the beginning here, since the start of this channel. We do have a new possible partner in Chicago, a couple of possible partners in Chicago, third largest market in the nation. Hopefully we'll be able to really have, there's a lot of things in the works, but hopefully this political show could really become something. So we're going to keep working on it. But you're a very critical partner. I'm so lucky to have been with you for so long. Yeah. I know you with Color Change. I think there's 8 million members, primarily Black women's group. And
Yeah.
you know, out here, I'm trying to muscle my way back into the Asian American space because other people have come in and set up shop. So that's another video. But hey, thanks for
And you
watching.
should. And you should.
Oh,
and
I
you
am.
should.
I am.
Yeah.
All right, folks. So basically, that's it. Any last comments? It was cool to see Carmen Quinones.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Carmen. I'm
Yeah.
glad you said so. Yellow Brick Road also.
Yellow Brick Road. Oh, you know
Yeah.
Yellow Brick Road?
No, well, I read the comment.
Okay, yeah, no, actually, Yellow Brick Road's I used to hang out a lot with the Discord. Yeah, but I got too sucked into activism. I really like those guys, but I have sections I need to finish out here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't have time to hang out. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
We'll
I'm gonna end the
see.
stream, folks. Thanks for watching, folks. I can't believe we actually had a couple watchers. Wow, that's amazing. Cool, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna end the stream right there. Just be you.